Hi, friends. So, we've been reading Gooney Greene, and according to our new schedule, I'm not going to see you guys until next week. And I didn't want you guys to have to wait that long for the next chapter. So, we're going to try to read our next chapter this way. So, let's continue on with Gooney Greene, chapter 4. In chapter 3, it was Friday, and she told the story about how she came from China on the flying carpet. And so, chapter 4, on Monday, Gooney Greene stood in front of the class when Mrs. Pigeon told her that it was story time. The children barely noticed Gooney clothes, even though she was wearing a ruffled pinafore, dark blue knee socks, and high-top basketball sneakers. The second graders, and Mrs. Pigeon too, were much more interested in Gooney earrings. The earrings dangled and glittered and were very large. "They're beautiful," Kiko said in an awed voice. "My grandma's house that has doorknobs that look like that," Trisha announced. "And she has a sparkly chandelier in the dining room. My grandma is very rich." "Do you have holes in your ears?" Malcolm asked. "My mom does. My mom went and had holes stabbed right into her earlobes with a needle." "I did too," Beanie called out. "I have pierced ears." "So do I," Mrs. Pigeon told the class. She turned her head from side to side so that they could all see her small gold earrings. "No," Gooney said. "My earrings screw into my ears. They have little screws that you turn." Barry Tuckerman thrust his arm into the ear and waved it wildly. Other children had arms raised also. "My mom has pierced ears," Barry said loudly. "Ben," Miss Pigeon said next. Ben said, "My mom has pierced ears, and so does my grandma." "All right, class," said Mrs. Pigeon. "Does anyone else have something to say which does not have anything to do with pierced ears? Because it's time for Gooney to begin today's story." All of the hands disappeared except for one. Chelsea kept her hand high in the air. Mrs. Pigeon sighed. "Chelsea?" "My mom has a pierced nose," Chelsea told the class. "Oh no," Kiko waved. "I'm going to be sick." "Shh," the other children said. When the class was quiet, Gooney began her Monday story. And here's Gooney all ready to tell her Monday story. The Prince, the Palace, and the Diamond Earrings. Once upon a time, before she moved to Water Tower, when she still lived in China, Gooney Greene was on her front porch playing Monopoly against herself. Gooney number 1, the thimble, owned all 4 railroads and St. Charles Place, which she liked because it was magenta. Gooney number 2, the car, was having a harder time of it. She owned Atlantic Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue, and she liked the combination of yellow and green. But she also owned both Water Tower Works and the electric company, but unfortunately she was in jail. Suddenly, just as Gooney number 2 tried to unsuccessfully, for the second time, throw doubles to get out of jail, she heard someone calling loudly, "Napoleon is missing!" It was the prince, who lived next door. Hands flew up into the air, and Gooney looked impatiently at her classmates. Here, let's have a picture here. Barry Tuckerman and Trisha Ann. "Are those really, really important questions?" she asked, "because I have just barely started the story." One by one, most of the hands went back down. Mrs. Pigeon had picked up the encyclopedia. "Gooney Mrs. Pigeon said, "I have a feeling that you know this is not already, but Napoleon Bonaparte," she turned to the class. "He was the Emperor of France," she explained. "Ooh," Kiko said, "I love emperors." Mrs. Pigeon, still looking at the encyclopedia, went on. "Napoleon was born in 1769. That's more than 200 years ago." Mrs. Pigeon," Barry Tuckerman said. "Yes, Barry? My grandmother once saw an emperor butterfly, but now it's extinct. It was purple," Barry Tuckerman said. Gooney sighed. "Do you want to hear this story or not?" she asked. "I can't wear these earrings all day. They're very heavy." "Yes, we do," Mrs. Pigeon said. "Please go on." "Ready?" Gooney asked the class. Everyone was ready, so Gooney continued. "Gooney the prince called, sounding very distressed. "Napoleon has disappeared. Can you help us find him?" Gooney carefully tucked all of the Monopoly money under the edge of the board so that it wouldn't blow away. There was a slight breeze. She had had problems with money blowing away in the past. She kept her own money collection, which she carried with her at all times, safely contained in a Ziploc bag. Then Gooney set out for clues that might reveal the whereabouts of Napoleon. Napoleon was not the Emperor of France. He was a large black poodle. Every hand in the second grade classroom shot up, even Felicia Ann's. I knew that would happen, Gooney Bird said. I just knew it. Time for an intermission. Mrs. Pigeon, do you want to deal with this? Mrs. Pigeon nodded. She thought for a moment, and then she announced, every child who has a poodle, put your hand down. 4 hands went down. Now, Mrs. Pigeon said, every child whose grandparents have poodles, hands down. 7 more hands were lowered. Okay, every child who knows a poodle who does interesting tricks or gets into trouble or who ran away once, hands down. Other hands went down, and now there was just 3 hands still in the air. Beanie, what kind of dog do you have? Mrs. Pigeon asked. A golden retriever. That's lovely. Ben, corgi. Good. And finally, Trisha? I don't have a dog, Trisha said sadly. I'm allergic to dogs, and my mother said I can never ever have one, or even a cat, not ever, because I might have a terrible asthma attack, and then I would have to go to the hospital, maybe in an ambulance, and we understand, Trisha. And now let's go back to the story, because we still don't know what happened to Napoleon, or about the palace, said Kiko, and the earrings. Gooney Bird shook her head a little so that the earrings moved sparkly and in a glamorous way. Listen for the word suddenly, Gooney Bird advised. I put one in the story already, but I like to sprinkle in several. Some other suddenlies will be coming up. Gooney Bird examined the prince's backyard. She saw a place where the ground was disturbed by the corner of the fence. Look, she said. See this bit of dog hair caught in the fence? That looks like Napoleon's. See? She said, then pointing to some newly dug earth. Here's where Napoleon wiggled under the fence. What a good detective you are, the prince said to Gooney Bird. Gooney Bird let herself out of the yard through the gate. She sniffed and she listened. Suddenly, there's a suddenly, called Malcolm. Good listening, Gooney Bird said, and then she continued. Suddenly, because of the clues that she smelled and heard, Gooney Bird moved forward. There, at the end of the alley, was an overturned garbage can, and there, with his head inside the can, was Napoleon, eating garbage. He had coffee grounds all over his face, and an orange peel was stuck on one of his ears. You naughty thing, Napoleon, Gooney Bird said. As she took hold of his collar, Napoleon burped. Oh, no, Kiko cried. Not garbage burping. Shh, the other children said. Many hands were waving in the air. Mrs. Pigeon stood up. No stories about dogs eating garbage, she said firmly. Not a single one. All the hands went down. Please, please, please tell us about the palace and the prince and the earrings, Chelsea begged. I'm about to, Gooney Bird said. Gooney Bird took Napoleon back to his house, and the prince asked Gooney Bird to go to the palace for a reward. Did you get all dressed up in a ball gown? Beanie asked. Maybe a tiara? Asked Trisha. I hadn't planned to describe the clothes, Gooney Bird said, but since you asked, I'll insert a descriptive passage here. When she went to the palace, Gooney Bird was wearing clothes from the L.L. Bean catalog. She wore island hopper shorts with front flap pockets and a pointed knit top in sun yellow. The prince had on rugged canvas shorts and polyester and nylon pale khaki plaid short sleeved. Malcolm disappeared under his desk. Ben picked up his arithmetic book and began to do some problems, and Nick put his head down on his arms and closed his eyes. Gooney Bird stared at them. Am I boring you? She asked. Yes, the class said, all but Felicia Ann, who was silent, and Kiko, who was not bored at all. What color were the island hopper shorts? Kiko asked. I hope blue. As a matter of fact, they were deep sea green with true blue stripes down the sides. I might wear them to school on Wednesday. Oh, good, Kiko said. I'll continue now, Gooney Bird said. It doesn't matter what the prince had on. The main character in this story is Gooney Bird, and that's important to tell a lot about the main character because the main character is right smack in the middle of everything. And all the others are just minor characters, and it is boring to tell about their clothes. Or you could call them secondary characters, Mrs. Pigeon pointed out. Excuse me for interrupting, Gooney Bird, but I'll just write that on the board. Secondary characters. Gooney Bird waited patiently while Mrs. Pigeon wrote, and then she breathed deeply and was about to continue, but she looked at the class. She walked down the classroom aisle to Malcolm's desk and peered under it. Malcolm was asleep on the floor. Ben was doing his arithmetic, and Nicholas was making his thumbs wrestle with each other. The left one was winning. It's my fault, Gooney Bird said loudly. I have failed to hold your attention. Of course, it didn't help that Mrs. Pigeon interrupted, but I blame myself for not inserting enough suspense into the story. Stories need suspense, Gooney Bird said, so I shall try to add some. Shall I continue the story now? Yes, Miss Pigeon said. Yes, the children said, all except Malcolm, who was still asleep, and Felicia Ann, who never said anything. So Goody Bird continued. I'll start right off with a suddenly, she said. That always wakes people up. Suddenly, when they entered the palace, Goody Bird needed to go to the bathroom. Malcolm woke up. He popped up from under his desk. I have to go to the bathroom, he said. Go, Miss Pigeon told him and pointed the class to the door. Malcolm hurried from the classroom. Did the palace have bathrooms? Beanie asked. Oh, I'm sorry, she said. I forgot to raise my hand. Yes, Goody Bird said. The palace had 2 bathrooms, gentlemen and ladies. And what about the diamond earrings? Tricia asked. I'll finish the story now, Goony Bird said. When she came out of the ladies' room, Goony Bird Greene saw a gumball machine. In a palace? Kiko asked. Shh, the other children said. Goony Bird continued. Goony Bird had not had a gumball for at least 4 months. She wanted one, and she had brought her money collection, since she always carried it everywhere in a heavy Ziploc bag. Her arms had developed big muscles from carrying her collection. Goony Bird stopped for a second in the story and held up her arms to display the muscles, and then she went on. So Goody Bird took a penny from her money collection and put it into the gumball machine. But instead of a gumball, out came a diamond earring. It was quite a pleasant surprise, and she screwed it into her left ear. After that, she felt lopsided, but she could see that there was another diamond earring inside the gumball machine. So she put in another penny, and she got out a blue gumball. It probably matched the true blue stripes in her green shorts, Kiko pointed out in a loud whisper. Shh, the class said. Goony Bird continued. Goony Bird put the blue gumball into her mouth. It made a large lump on her cheek, and it tasted like spearmint. Now she felt doubly lopsided. So she took out another penny from her money collection and she put it into the gumball machine. This time she got a yellow gumball. She put the yellow gumball into her mouth, and now she had a large lump on either side of her face. So her face wasn't lopsided, but her head still felt lopsided because she only had 1 diamond earring. So she put in another penny, and she got a red gumball, and she put it in her pocket to save for later. And now her hips felt lopsided, so she took another penny from her money collection. This time she got an orange gumball and put it into her pocket, and now her hips weren't lopsided anymore. But she still had only 1 diamond earring. Goody Bird stopped the story and looked at the class. I'm going to jump ahead now, she said to Mrs. Pigeon. Is there a word for when an author jumps ahead in a story and skips over some things? Mrs. Pigeon thought about it. When an author jumps backwards in a story, it's called a flashback, so maybe jumping ahead would be a flash forward. Well, Goony Bird announced, I'm flashing forward now. After 20 minutes, all of the pennies in Goony Bird's money collection were gone, and the gumball machine was empty, and now Goony Bird had 67 gumballs, 2 in her mouth, 2 in her pocket, and 63 in her Ziploc bag. Also, she had a pair of very large glittery diamond earrings, which she wears to this day. When they saw her in the diamond earrings, everyone in the palace, including the prince, 2 motorcycle guys, a lady in a wheelchair, cheered. They hugged, they kissed, they did a short but beautiful ballet. The end. What a lovely story, Mrs. Pigeon said, and the flash forward was very effective, Goony Bird. I'm so glad you finally got the second earring. Goony Bird turned her head from side to side so that her classmates could admire the earrings. All of the children clapped. Did the prince ask you to marry him? Kiko asked. What are you talking about? Goony Bird said. The Pryns are already married. Mr. Howard Prynne is married to Mrs. Amanda Prynne. 1 Prynne plus 1 Prynne equals the Pryns. The Pryns lived next door to me with Napoleon. Oh, the children said. The Pryns, not a prince. Barry Tuckerman had jumped up and was waving his arm frantically in the air. That wasn't a true story, Barry called out. I only tell absolutely true stories, Goony Bird said impatiently. How many times must I tell you that? No, it wasn't, because I've seen lots of pictures of palaces, and they have throne rooms and red carpets, and people get dressed up in ball gowns, and... Barry, Goony Bird said with a sigh. What am I gonna do with you? What do you mean? Barry asked. You're talking about a small P, palace. But I was talking about a capital letter ice cream shop called The Palace, where they have bathrooms, Beanie suggested, and a gumball machine, Chelsea said, with diamond earrings. Exactly right, Goony Bird said, and she took her seat. Then carefully she unscrewed her dangling diamond earrings. Ouch, she said, these really hurt. Malcolm returned to the classroom. Did you get out of jail, Goony Bird? He asked. Goony Bird looked unhappy for a moment. No, Napoleon ate my Monopoly money.